There is a specific kind of person that other people cannot quite stop thinking about, not because of anything loud or obvious, not because of the most striking looks in the room or the most impressive resume on paper, but because of something considerably harder to name, a particular quality of presence that lingers in someone else's mind long after the interaction itself has ended. Most people spend their entire lives trying to manufacture this effect through the wrong tools entirely, chasing attention through volume, through over-explaining themselves, through constant availability, through trying so hard to be liked that they accidentally become instantly forgettable, a pattern worth naming clearly before we go any further. 500 years ago, a sharp, unsentimental Florentine political thinker named Niccolò Machiavelli studied exactly why certain figures held an almost magnetic grip on the minds of everyone around them, allies and rivals alike, while other, equally capable figures faded quietly into the background the moment they left the room. His conclusion had almost nothing to do with charm in the conventional sense, and almost everything to do with a specific, deliberate architecture of presence, timing, scarcity, and depth that most people never learn to build consciously, let alone deliberately. Tonight, on The Hidden Mind, we are extracting Machiavelli's darkest psychological insights into exactly what makes someone genuinely unforgettable, the kind of presence that lives rent-free in another person's mind, built the right way, on real depth and real self-respect, rather than the shallow tricks that collapse the moment someone looks closely enough to see through them. Let's begin, and let's build the kind of presence that actually lasts, starting right now, today. Welcome to The Hidden Mind, the channel dedicated to uncovering the real mechanics of power, psychology, and human nature hiding beneath the surface of everyday life, including the surprisingly common misunderstandings about what actually makes one person genuinely unforgettable to another. If you are new here, you should know this is not a channel built around comfortable, feel-good platitudes. It is a channel built around the uncomfortable, unfiltered truths that actually explain why certain people leave a lasting impression, while others, despite trying considerably harder, simply do not. Today's video pulls apart the specific psychology behind genuine, lasting magnetism, the quality that makes someone difficult to stop thinking about, built through Machiavelli's cold, clear-eyed observations of presence, scarcity, timing, and depth. Before we go any further, it is worth being completely direct about something important. Everything in today's video is built around becoming a genuinely more compelling, more magnetic, more memorable version of yourself, never around manipulating, controlling, or exploiting another person's vulnerabilities to force an attachment that was never genuinely earned. The difference between genuine magnetism and manipulation matters enormously, and we will return to that distinction clearly and repeatedly throughout today's video. Because real, lasting interest from another person is only ever worth having when it is freely given, never engineered through tactics that quietly damage the person on the receiving end. This is not comfortable material in the sense that it asks real patience of you, and it directly challenges the appeal of every quick-fix version of this subject you have likely encountered elsewhere, versions that promise the same result without any of the genuine underlying work this video has consistently asked you to actually invest in. Before we begin, I want to ask you for a few small things that genuinely matter to this channel and the growing community around it. If today's video gives you even one moment of real clarity, please take a couple of seconds to hit the like button. It is the simplest, most direct way to help this video reach more people who genuinely need it. Leave a comment below and tell us honestly which part of your own presence you would most like to strengthen. We read every single comment, and they genuinely shape what we build here next. If you know someone who tries far too hard to be liked and ends up strangely forgettable as a result, share this video with them. It might be exactly the shift they have been needing. And if you have not yet subscribed to The Hidden Mind, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications right now, because we release a brand new deep dive into power, psychology, and human nature every single week. Finally, if this channel provides real value to you, please consider supporting our work directly with a super thanks using the button below. Every single contribution genuinely helps us continue building this project. Now, let's uncover exactly what makes certain people genuinely unforgettable, and exactly how to become one of them the honest way. Why most people accidentally make themselves forgettable. Before we walk through the specific psychological principles themselves, it is worth understanding exactly why so many genuinely kind, genuinely interesting people struggle to leave the lasting impression they actually deserve to leave, while other people, sometimes considerably less substantial underneath the surface, manage to occupy far more space in everyone else's memory. Machiavelli observed a pattern among the political figures he studied closely that applies with remarkable precision to ordinary personal magnetism today. That constant, unguarded availability, combined with an eagerness to explain, justify, and reveal absolutely everything about yourself immediately, tends to flatten a person's presence considerably, removing the sense of depth, mystery, and self-possession that makes someone genuinely compelling to continue thinking about once they have left the room. This happens for a specific, identifiable reason. Human attention and interest are drawn disproportionately toward things that remain slightly incomplete, slightly unresolved, slightly beyond immediate, total access. A psychological pattern researchers have studied extensively, and one Machiavelli intuited clearly through pure observation of human behavior centuries before formal psychology existed as a discipline. A person who reveals everything about themselves immediately, who is endlessly available at every hour, who explains their every motive and feeling without any restraint or discretion, hands the other person's mind nothing left to actively wonder about, nothing left to return to later in a quiet, unoccupied moment, because the entire picture has already been handed over completely, with nothing held back to keep genuine curiosity alive. This does not mean becoming cold, withholding, or intentionally difficult to access, an approach that frequently backfires by reading as genuine disinterest rather than magnetic mystery. It means understanding that genuine, lasting interest depends on a careful, honest balance between generosity and restraint, between warmth and self-possession, a balance most people never learn to strike deliberately, defaulting instead to one extreme or the other, either total, unguarded openness that flattens their own mystery entirely, or genuine coldness that simply reads as disinterest rather than intrigue. With that foundation established, let's walk through exactly how to strike this balance deliberately. Principle 1. Scarcity of presence makes you matter more. The first principle concerns the genuine psychological power of scarcity, the well-documented tendency for human beings to assign considerably more value to anything, including another person's time and attention, when that thing is not endlessly, unconditionally available on demand. Machiavelli observed that political figures who made themselves constantly available to every single request for their time and attention were consistently valued less and taken less seriously than figures who maintained a more selective, considered presence, extending their attention deliberately, rather than automatically, to whoever happened to ask for it in any given moment. This principle translates directly and powerfully into personal magnetism. Someone who is always immediately available, who drops everything the instant they are contacted, who never has competing priorities, interests, or plans of their own, unintentionally signals that their attention carries relatively little cost, and therefore relatively little value, to the person receiving it, regardless of how genuinely warm or attentive that constant availability was actually intended to be. Someone who maintains a genuinely full, engaged life of their own, real interests, real friendships, real pursuits that exist independently of any single relationship, and who extends their attention deliberately and warmly when they do offer it, rather than reflexively and automatically, creates a considerably stronger psychological impression, because that attention now carries genuine, felt value, having been extended by choice from a place of genuine abundance rather than out of anxious, constant availability. Consider how this plays out in the earliest stages of any new romantic or even close platonic connection. The person who responds to every single message within seconds, who has no other plans, interests, or priorities competing for their time, frequently finds their attention taken considerably less seriously than the person who responds warmly and genuinely, but from within a full, engaged life that clearly exists on its own terms, independent of this one particular connection. This principle asks you to build and protect a genuinely full life of your own, real interests, real friendships, real personal goals, not as a manipulative performance of unavailability, but as a genuine foundation from which your attention, when you do offer it, actually carries the weight and value that comes from being freely chosen rather than anxiously, automatically given. Principle 2. The unfinished story stays in their mind. The second principle concerns a genuinely fascinating psychological phenomenon that modern researchers now call the Zeigarnik effect, named after the psychologist who first documented it. The well-established tendency for the human mind to remember and continue actively thinking about incomplete or unresolved experiences considerably more persistently than experiences that have already been fully, completely resolved. Machiavelli intuited a version of this principle clearly, observing that figures who revealed themselves gradually, allowing genuine curiosity and anticipation to build naturally over successive interactions, left a considerably deeper, more lasting impression than figures who revealed their entire character, their entire life story, and their entire set of opinions within a single, exhaustive first encounter. Applied to genuine personal magnetism, this principle asks you to resist the natural impulse to share absolutely everything about yourself immediately upon meeting someone genuinely interesting, an impulse that, however well-intentioned, tends to flatten the natural unfolding of curiosity that makes someone genuinely compelling to continue thinking about after a first meaningful interaction. Consider the difference between two people on an early date or a promising new friendship. One person answers every single question with complete, exhaustive detail immediately, covering their entire life history, every opinion, every past relationship, within the first conversation, leaving genuinely little left for the other person's mind to wonder about or return to afterward. The other person shares genuinely, warmly, and honestly, but allows certain things to unfold naturally across multiple conversations rather than all at once, offering enough authentic depth to feel genuinely engaging while leaving enough genuine curiosity intact that the other person's mind naturally continues returning to unanswered questions in the hours and days between interactions. This principle requires genuine authenticity throughout. This is never about being deliberately evasive, dishonest, or withholding basic information out of manipulative calculation. It is about allowing the natural, honest unfolding of a genuine connection to occur gradually, rather than front-loading every single detail immediately out of nervous eagerness to be fully known right away. Principle 3. Become genuinely compelling before anything else. The third principle concerns perhaps the single most important, foundational truth underlying everything else discussed throughout today's video, that no psychological technique, however skillfully applied, can substitute for genuine substance, genuine depth, and genuine ongoing personal development, and that any lasting impression built without this underlying substance will inevitably collapse the moment the other person looks closely enough to notice its absence. Machiavelli observed that political figures who relied purely on surface-level charm and performance, without any genuine underlying competence or substance to support it, might command attention briefly, but consistently failed to sustain genuine, lasting influence and respect once their surface performance had been tested against real circumstance and real scrutiny over time. This principle asks you to invest the majority of your genuine effort not into learning clever psychological tricks, but into becoming an authentically more interesting, more developed, more genuinely engaged version of yourself, pursuing real interests and real growth for their own sake, independent of whether anyone else happens to be watching or impressed by them in any given moment. Consider the genuine difference between someone who has cultivated real depth, real curiosity about the world, real skills and passions they pursue consistently over time, and someone who has instead memorized a handful of conversational techniques and psychological tricks without any underlying substance behind them. The first person's magnetism holds up genuinely well under sustained attention and repeated interaction, because there is genuine depth there to keep discovering. The second person's borrowed magnetism tends to fade quickly once the initial technique has been recognized or has simply run its course, revealing a considerably thinner, less genuinely engaging person underneath the performance. This principle asks you to treat every other technique discussed throughout today's video as something that only works when it sits on top of genuine, ongoing personal substance, never as a substitute for actually becoming someone genuinely worth being curious about in the first place. Principle 4. Genuine resonance beats performed similarity. The fourth principle concerns the well-documented psychological pattern, often called similarity attraction, the tendency for people to feel considerably more drawn toward others who share genuine, authentic common ground with them. Whether that common ground involves values, interests, sense of humor, or fundamental outlook on life. Machiavelli observed that political alliances built on genuine, shared underlying interest and values proved considerably more durable and genuinely compelling than alliances built on performed, superficial similarity that collapsed the moment genuine differences eventually surfaced under real pressure. This principle asks you to seek and highlight genuine common ground with someone you are hoping to build a genuine, lasting connection with, rather than performing an artificial, calculated version of similarity specifically designed to manufacture false rapport, a strategy that frequently backfires once the performance is inevitably recognized for what it actually is. Consider the meaningful difference between genuinely discovering and exploring shared values, interests, and outlook with someone through honest, curious conversation, and deliberately mirroring someone's opinions, moods, or stated preferences purely as a calculated technique to seem more agreeable and similar than you actually are. The first approach builds genuine, lasting resonance because it is grounded in something real that will continue to hold up as the relationship deepens over time. The second approach, however initially effective, tends to produce a genuinely hollow connection that eventually reveals its own artificiality once the other person notices that your apparent similarity conveniently shifts to match whatever they happen to express in any given moment, rather than reflecting a stable, genuine set of your own actual values and preferences. This principle asks you to pursue genuine curiosity about another person's actual values and interests, sharing your own honestly in return, allowing genuine resonance to emerge naturally from real common ground rather than manufacturing an artificial version of it through calculated mirroring. Principle 5. Build trust through reliable follow-through, never through manufactured unpredictability. The fifth principle addresses directly one of the most genuinely dangerous, genuinely harmful ideas that frequently circulates within less responsible corners of dating and relationship advice. The notion that deliberately unpredictable, inconsistent behavior, alternating between warmth and coldness, specifically to keep someone psychologically off balance, produces genuine lasting attraction. This tactic, sometimes described as intermittent reinforcement, does frequently produce a short-term, anxious form of preoccupation in the person experiencing it, a preoccupation that can genuinely feel, from the outside, like intense interest or attraction. It is worth being completely direct about why this specific tactic deserves to be named and rejected clearly, rather than presented as a legitimate technique alongside the others discussed throughout today's video. The anxious preoccupation this tactic produces is psychologically much closer to the trauma bonding dynamics observed in genuinely unhealthy and abusive relationships than it is to genuine healthy attraction, and deliberately deploying it damages the actual well-being of the person on the receiving end, regardless of how effectively it might produce short-term, anxious attention. Machiavelli's own writing, properly understood, actually supports rejecting this tactic rather than embracing it, because he consistently emphasized that lasting, genuine loyalty and respect were built through reliable, consistent conduct over time, never through deliberately manufactured instability designed to keep someone in a state of anxious uncertainty. The considerably healthier, considerably more genuinely magnetic alternative involves building a reputation, over real time and real interactions, for being someone whose warmth is genuine and whose word can be relied upon, someone who does what they say they will do, who follows through consistently, and whose positive attention, when given, can actually be trusted rather than anxiously second-guessed. This reliability, paradoxically, tends to produce a considerably deeper, more genuinely secure form of ongoing interest and attachment than manufactured unpredictability ever manages to produce, precisely because it allows the other person to invest their genuine trust and interest without the underlying anxiety that manufactured instability inevitably produces, alongside whatever short-term intensity it might generate. Principle 6. Let some things remain genuinely yours alone. The sixth principle concerns the specific, deliberate practice of maintaining a private, self-possessed inner world that is not entirely handed over to anyone else's scrutiny, regardless of how close or genuinely trusted that relationship eventually becomes. Machiavelli observed that political figures who maintained a genuine sense of their own private judgment, their own independent goals, and their own inner life, separate from whatever alliance or relationship they were currently cultivating, retained a specific kind of self-possession that others found genuinely, persistently compelling, precisely because it signaled a stable, secure sense of self that did not depend entirely on external validation or complete transparency to feel genuinely whole. This principle asks you to maintain genuine personal goals, private reflections, and independent pursuits that remain genuinely your own, not because you are hiding anything dishonest or harmful, but because a person who has fully, completely handed over their entire inner world to another person's constant awareness and validation often loses a specific quality of self-possession that made them genuinely compelling to be around in the first place. Consider the difference between someone who maintains a genuine, private inner life, personal reflections, independent goals and interests that continue regardless of what is happening in any particular relationship, and someone who has made their entire sense of identity and daily experience completely transparent and dependent on constant validation from another person. The first person retains a specific magnetic quality, a sense that there is always more depth still to discover, precisely because their entire inner world was never fully handed over in the first place. The second person, however genuinely warm and open, often becomes, over time, considerably less compelling, precisely because there is nothing left held privately in reserve, no remaining sense of independent depth still waiting to be discovered through continued genuine interest and attention. Principle 7. Protect their autonomy, never their dependency. The seventh and, in many ways, the single most important principle discussed throughout today's video concerns the crucial ethical line that separates everything discussed so far from genuine manipulation and harm, and it deserves to be stated as clearly and directly as possible. Everything discussed throughout today's video, scarcity of presence, the natural unfolding of genuine curiosity, authentic substance, real resonance, reliable follow-through, and genuine self-possession, is built entirely around becoming a more genuinely compelling, more magnetic version of yourself, and around allowing another person's genuine, freely given interest to develop naturally in response to that authentic magnetism. None of it is built around deliberately manufacturing psychological dependency, deliberately exploiting someone's insecurities, deliberately isolating them from other genuine sources of support and connection in their life, or deliberately overriding their own genuine judgment and autonomy about whether they actually want to be involved with you at all. This distinction matters enormously, and it deserves to be named directly rather than left as an implicit assumption. Genuine, healthy attraction and interest, even when built deliberately through the kind of self-development and presence discussed throughout today's video, always remains something the other person is genuinely free to walk away from at any point, based on their own independent judgment about what is actually good for them. Manipulative tactics designed to create genuine obsession in the clinical, unhealthy sense, deliberately exploiting known insecurities, deliberately creating anxious uncertainty through manufactured unpredictability, deliberately isolating someone from their existing friendships and support systems, deliberately undermining someone's confidence so that your attention feels more necessary to their sense of self-worth, cross an important, meaningful line from genuine magnetism into genuine psychological harm, and they deserve to be named clearly and rejected, rather than quietly implied as legitimate techniques, alongside everything else discussed today. The genuine goal of everything in this video has always been to help you become someone whose company, attention, and interest are actually worth having, freely and happily chosen by someone whose own independent judgment and well-being remain fully, genuinely intact and respected throughout the entire process. Bringing the 7 principles together. Having walked through all 7 of these principles individually, it is worth stepping back to see the coherent, unified philosophy connecting them into a single, genuinely healthy approach to building lasting magnetism and interest. Maintaining a genuinely full, engaged life of your own ensures your attention carries real, felt value when you choose to extend it. Allowing genuine curiosity to unfold gradually, rather than front-loading every detail immediately, keeps a natural sense of ongoing discovery alive in any new connection. Investing your primary effort into genuine, ongoing personal substance and growth ensures that whatever magnetism you build actually holds up under sustained attention and real scrutiny over time. Seeking genuine resonance rather than performed similarity builds connections grounded in something real enough to survive the inevitable moments when genuine differences eventually surface. Building a reliable, consistent reputation rather than relying on manufactured unpredictability allows genuine trust and secure interest to develop over time, without the underlying anxiety that manipulative tactics inevitably produce, alongside whatever short-term intensity they might generate. Maintaining a genuine private inner world, rather than handing over complete transparency immediately, preserves the specific sense of ongoing depth that keeps someone genuinely compelling well beyond an initial first impression. And protecting the other person's genuine autonomy and well-being throughout the entire process, rather than deliberately engineering dependency or exploiting vulnerability, ensures that whatever interest and connection you ultimately build is something genuinely worth having, freely given, rather than manipulatively extracted. Together, these 7 principles describe a considerably more sustainable, considerably more genuinely ethical approach to magnetism than the shallow, manipulative tricks that frequently circulate under similar-sounding titles. An approach that builds lasting, healthy interest precisely because it never requires damaging the well-being of the person on the receiving end in order to work. Why the darkest version of this advice always fails eventually. It is worth taking a genuine, honest look at exactly why the more manipulative version of this topic, the version that promises shortcuts through exploiting insecurity or engineering anxious dependency, tends to produce results that collapse eventually, often at real cost to both people involved. Rather than the durable, genuinely satisfying connection most people are actually hoping to build when they first become curious about this subject. Machiavelli's own broader body of work, despite the dark reputation his name still carries 5 centuries later, actually offers a genuinely useful warning on this exact point, because he observed repeatedly that political alliances and loyalties built through fear, manipulation, and exploited weakness consistently proved less durable than alliances built through genuine mutual benefit and earned respect. Precisely because the manipulated party, once they eventually recognized what had actually been done to them, frequently responded with a rupture considerably more severe and more permanent than anything a more honest, if slower, approach would have ever produced. This same pattern plays out with striking consistency in personal relationships built on manipulation rather than genuine magnetism. A connection built through deliberately engineered anxiety, exploited insecurity, or manufactured dependency may produce an intense, preoccupied form of attention in its early stages, an intensity that can genuinely feel, from the outside and even from the inside in the moment, like powerful attraction. But this intensity is built on an unstable foundation, because it depends entirely on the continued application of the original manipulative tactic, the continued unpredictability, the continued exploitation of the same vulnerability that produced the initial preoccupation in the first place. The moment this tactic is recognized for what it actually is, and it very frequently eventually is recognized, given enough time and enough genuine reflection on the part of the person experiencing it, the entire structure tends to collapse considerably more completely and more permanently than a connection built on genuine substance ever would, often accompanied by real, lasting resentment and real psychological harm to the person who was manipulated, harm that a channel genuinely interested in your long-term well-being and in the well-being of the people you care about connecting with has real reason to want you to avoid causing, regardless of how tempting the apparent shortcut might initially seem. What genuine magnetism actually feels like from the outside. There is a genuinely useful, practical way to check whether you are building the kind of presence described throughout today's video, or whether you have begun drifting toward the manipulative shortcuts this video has specifically warned against, and it involves honestly examining how the other person's experience of the connection actually feels from their own perspective. To whatever extent you can genuinely assess this, genuine magnetism, built through the 7 principles discussed today, tends to leave the other person feeling energized, genuinely curious, and genuinely secure in their own judgment about the connection, even during the moments when they are not actively in your presence. They feel drawn toward continued interest because something genuine and substantial keeps rewarding their attention, not because an underlying anxiety keeps pulling them back toward you in an attempt to resolve some uncomfortable uncertainty you have deliberately manufactured. Manipulative attraction, by contrast, tends to leave the other person feeling a considerably more anxious, considerably more preoccupied form of attention, one that frequently comes bundled with genuine confusion, genuine self-doubt, and a nagging, persistent uncertainty about where they actually stand. An uncertainty that, however intense and attention-consuming it might feel, is considerably closer to genuine distress than to genuine, healthy desire. If you find yourself genuinely uncertain about which category a specific approach or tactic actually falls into, a useful, honest test involves asking whether you would be comfortable fully, transparently explaining exactly what you are doing and why, directly to the person on the receiving end, without that explanation itself damaging or undermining the connection. Genuine magnetism generally survives this kind of transparency reasonably well, because there is nothing manipulative to hide, simply an honest account of genuinely investing in your own depth, reliability, and self-possession. Manipulative tactics rarely survive this same transparency test, because their actual effectiveness depends specifically on the other person remaining unaware that a deliberate tactic is even being employed against them. A genuine, reliable signal that the tactic in question has crossed from healthy magnetism into something considerably closer to manipulation, regardless of how it might have been marketed or described to you elsewhere. A closer look at scarcity without sliding into games. It is worth spending a little more time on the very first principle discussed today, because scarcity is genuinely one of the most frequently misunderstood and most frequently misapplied concepts in this entire subject. And getting the distinction right matters considerably more than getting any of the other 6 principles right. The genuinely healthy version of scarcity, the version Machiavelli's own observations actually support, comes from having a real, full life that simply, honestly limits how much unstructured time and attention you have available for any single relationship, not from deliberately withholding attention you actually have available, purely as a calculated performance intended to manipulate someone else's perception of your interest level. Consider the meaningful difference between these 2 versions in practice. A person who genuinely has a demanding career, genuine friendships they actively maintain, and genuine personal projects they are pursuing responds to messages within a reasonable but not instantaneous time frame, not because they are strategically delaying their response for effect, but because they are, in that specific moment, genuinely engaged in something else that also matters to them. This person's occasional unavailability is honest, and it communicates something genuinely true and genuinely attractive, that they are a person with a real, full life of their own, exactly the quality that makes their attention feel valuable when it is actually given. A person practicing manipulative, game-playing scarcity, by contrast, is fully available in that exact moment, sees the message arrive, and deliberately delays their response anyway, specifically calculated to produce a certain psychological effect in the other person, an artificial performance rather than an honest reflection of their actual, full life and genuine priorities in that moment. This distinction matters enormously, because the game-playing version tends to eventually be detected, whether consciously or simply intuitively, and once detected, it reads as exactly what it actually is, a manipulation rather than a genuine reflection of an interesting, engaged life, undermining the very magnetism it was originally intended to produce. The honest version of scarcity, by contrast, remains genuinely effective precisely because there is nothing calculated or artificial underneath it to eventually be discovered and resented. Simply an honest reflection of a person who has built a genuinely full, engaged life that exists independently of any single relationship. Exactly the foundation this entire video has been encouraging you to build from the very beginning. The difference between mystery and evasiveness. There is a similarly important distinction worth drawing clearly around the second principle discussed today, the gradual, natural unfolding of genuine curiosity, because this principle too is frequently misapplied in ways that slide from genuine, healthy mystery into something considerably closer to evasiveness or outright dishonesty. an outcome this video has never intended to encourage. Genuine mystery, the kind that keeps someone's genuine curiosity naturally engaged over time, comes from the honest, natural pacing of a relationship that is still relatively new, sharing genuinely, warmly, and honestly, while simply allowing certain deeper layers to unfold across multiple conversations rather than all at once, exactly the way any genuinely developing relationship naturally proceeds when it is not being artificially rushed or artificially delayed. Evasiveness, by contrast, involves deliberately dodging genuine, reasonable questions, deflecting honest curiosity with vague non-answers, or actively concealing information the other person has a genuine, reasonable right to know at the appropriate stage of a developing relationship. Information about your actual availability, your actual intentions, or your actual circumstances, concealment that crosses from healthy pacing into a form of dishonesty that damages trust once it is eventually discovered, as it very frequently eventually is. The test here is genuinely similar to the transparency test discussed earlier regarding scarcity. Healthy mystery survives honest reflection reasonably well, because it simply reflects the natural, unhurried pace of a genuinely developing relationship, nothing being actively hidden, simply not everything being handed over all at once before there has been genuine time and genuine trust built to support that deeper sharing. Evasiveness does not survive this same honest reflection nearly as well, because it specifically depends on the other person not fully realizing that genuine, reasonable information is being deliberately withheld from them, an outcome that, once recognized, tends to produce genuine hurt and genuine mistrust, rather than the sustained curiosity healthy mystery is actually intended to produce. Keeping this distinction genuinely clear in your own mind as you practice the principles discussed throughout today's video will protect you from the single most common way this entire subject gets misapplied, sliding from genuine, healthy intrigue into something considerably closer to dishonesty, an outcome that ultimately undermines the exact lasting connection this video has been trying to help you build from the very beginning. A note on why this subject attracts so much bad advice. It is worth closing our discussion of the 7 principles with an honest acknowledgement of why this particular subject, more than almost any other topic this channel regularly covers, attracts such a genuinely large volume of harmful, manipulative advice circulating under similar-sounding titles across the internet. Genuine, healthy magnetism, the kind built through real personal substance, real reliability, and real self-possession, takes genuine time and genuine ongoing effort to develop, and it offers no reliable shortcut around that fundamental requirement. Manipulative tactics, by contrast, frequently promise, and sometimes genuinely do produce, a considerably faster, more intense short-term result. An anxious, preoccupied form of attention that can feel, in the moment, remarkably similar to the genuine magnetism this video has been describing throughout. This apparent speed and intensity makes manipulative advice genuinely tempting to a considerable number of people, particularly people who are currently feeling genuinely insecure or genuinely impatient about their own romantic or social prospects, exactly the audience most vulnerable to advice that promises a shortcut around the genuinely harder, genuinely slower work this video has been recommending instead. Recognizing this dynamic honestly is itself a genuinely useful piece of protection, both for your own decision-making as you continue exploring this subject beyond today's video, and for your own conduct toward the people you are hoping to build genuine connection with. Any advice, from this channel or anywhere else, that promises to make someone genuinely obsessed with you, quickly, easily, or without requiring genuine, ongoing investment in your own actual substance and character, deserves genuine skepticism, not because rapid attraction is impossible, sometimes it genuinely does happen quickly and completely honestly, but because any method that specifically bypasses the requirement for genuine substance underneath it is, almost by definition, relying on some form of manipulation to produce its promised result, a trade this video has consistently, deliberately steered you away from throughout every single principle discussed today. A short word on patience. There is one final, genuinely important practical note worth sharing before we move toward today's close. an honest acknowledgement that everything discussed throughout this video genuinely does require more patience than the manipulative shortcuts this video has specifically warned against. Building genuine substance, genuine reliability, and a genuinely full life takes real, sustained time. Considerably more time than learning a handful of psychological tricks would require. This patience is worth extending to yourself honestly, rather than expecting the kind of instant transformation that manipulative advice frequently, falsely promises. The genuine advantage of this slower, more patient approach is that its results, once genuinely built, prove considerably more durable and considerably more satisfying than anything a manipulative shortcut could ever produce. Because you are not simply performing a role that must be constantly, exhaustingly maintained, you are becoming, genuinely and permanently, a more substantial, more grounded, more genuinely compelling version of yourself. A transformation that continues paying dividends across every single relationship in your life, romantic and otherwise, for as long as you continue investing in it going forward. How to actually start building this kind of presence? Understanding these 7 principles intellectually is a meaningful first step, but genuinely building this kind of presence requires deliberate, ongoing practice applied to your own specific life and relationships, not simply passive agreement with the ideas presented throughout today's video. This is genuinely slower, more demanding work than memorizing a handful of clever lines or tactics, and it is worth approaching with real patience rather than expecting overnight transformation. Begin by conducting an honest audit of your own current life, identifying whether you currently maintain a genuinely full, engaged set of interests, friendships, and personal goals, independent of any single relationship. And if this foundation feels thin, begin deliberately investing in it this week, not as a manipulative performance, but as a genuine source of the self-possession that makes your attention actually valuable when you extend it. Practice noticing your own instinct to share everything about yourself immediately upon meeting someone genuinely interesting, and experiment with allowing certain genuine details to unfold naturally across several conversations instead, while remaining completely honest throughout, simply pacing the natural unfolding of a connection rather than front-loading everything at once. Invest real, consistent effort into your own ongoing personal growth and genuine interests, treating this investment as the actual foundation everything else discussed today depends upon, rather than treating any single conversational technique as a substitute for this deeper, more time-consuming work. Practice seeking genuine common ground with people you are hoping to connect with, through honest curiosity about their actual values and interests, rather than performing calculated agreement designed purely to seem more similar than you genuinely are. Build a consistent, reliable reputation for following through on what you say you will do, treating this reliability as a genuine source of deep, secure attraction, rather than assuming manufactured unpredictability would somehow prove more effective. Maintain genuine personal reflections, goals, and pursuits that remain entirely your own, resisting the urge to hand over your complete inner world immediately, even to people you trust and care about deeply. And throughout every single one of these practices, continuously check your own underlying intentions against the 7th principle discussed today, asking honestly whether you are genuinely trying to become someone more compelling and worth knowing, or whether you have begun drifting toward tactics that exploit vulnerability, manufacture dependency, or override another person's genuine autonomy and well-being. A check worth returning to consistently as you continue practicing everything else discussed throughout today's video. A final reflection on what lasting interest actually requires. Before we close today's video, it is worth sitting honestly with what genuine, lasting magnetism actually requires. Because it was never, at its core, about tricking or manipulating anyone into an interest they would not otherwise genuinely feel. This is worth stating plainly, more than once if necessary, because it is precisely the part of this subject most vulnerable to being quietly forgotten once someone becomes genuinely eager for results and begins searching for shortcuts elsewhere. It was about becoming someone whose presence, substance, and reliability are genuinely, authentically worth the interest they eventually generate, built through real personal development rather than psychological shortcuts that inevitably collapse once tested against real time and real scrutiny. Machiavelli's own observations of lasting political influence consistently pointed toward this same underlying truth, that genuine, durable influence over other people's minds and loyalty was never actually built through manipulation and trickery alone, however cleverly deployed in the short term, but through the considerably harder, considerably more sustainable work of becoming someone genuinely worth that continued attention and trust. A lesson that translates almost perfectly from the political courts he originally studied into the far more personal territory of ordinary romantic and social connection. The 7 principles discussed throughout today's video ask something genuinely demanding of you: real ongoing investment in your own depth, your own reliability, and your own self-possession, rather than a shortcut that promises the same result without any of the underlying substance actually required to sustain it. This is, in the end, considerably better news than the shortcut would have been, because magnetism built this way does not require constant maintenance of a fragile performance. It simply requires you to keep becoming a genuinely more interesting, more grounded, more reliable version of yourself, a project that continues paying dividends across every single relationship in your life, not merely the one you may have originally had in mind when you began watching today's video. That brings us to the end of today's deep dive into the real psychology behind genuine, lasting magnetism, the kind of presence that makes someone genuinely difficult to stop thinking about, built the honest way, on real substance rather than manipulation. Maintain a genuinely full life of your own, so your attention carries real value when you choose to give it. Let genuine curiosity unfold naturally rather than handing over everything immediately. Invest in real, ongoing personal substance, because no technique survives contact with sustained attention without something genuine underneath it. Seek authentic resonance rather than performed similarity. Build your reputation on reliable follow-through rather than manufactured unpredictability. Protect a genuine private inner world that remains entirely your own. And above everything else discussed today, protect the other person's genuine autonomy and well-being throughout the entire process, because interest that has to be manipulated into existence was never actually worth having in the first place. Carry these 7 principles with you, not as a manipulation manual, but as a genuine framework for becoming someone whose presence, substance, and reliability make you naturally, authentically compelling to the people who matter most in your life. A framework that keeps working long after any borrowed trick would have already collapsed under its own weight, and one that never requires you to compromise the well-being of anyone you genuinely care about connecting with along the way. Before you go, I want to ask you once more for a few small things that genuinely matter to this channel. If today's video gave you real clarity about your own presence and how to strengthen it, please take a moment to hit the like button. It costs you nothing and directly helps this video reach more people who genuinely need it. Leave a comment below and tell us honestly which of these 7 principles you think you personally need to work on the most. We genuinely read every single comment, and they genuinely shape the direction of future videos here on The Hidden Mind, week after week, as this community continues to grow and engage with exactly this kind of practical, honest material. If you know someone who tries far too hard to be liked and ends up strangely forgettable as a result, please share this video with them today. It might be exactly the shift they have been needing, and it may be considerably easier for them to genuinely absorb this framed as a video than as advice coming directly from you, given how personal and sometimes sensitive this particular subject can genuinely feel to hear about from someone close to you. And if you have not yet subscribed to The Hidden Mind, now is the perfect moment. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our weekly deep dives into power, psychology, and the hidden mechanics of human connection, mechanics that shape far more of your relationships, romantic and otherwise, than most people ever take the time to examine clearly. Finally, if this video delivered genuine value to you and you would like to directly support the growth of this channel, please consider leaving a super thanks using the button below. Every single contribution genuinely helps us continue building content exactly like this for you, week after week, as this community keeps growing steadily larger. Until next time, remember that the goal was never to trick anyone into an interest they did not genuinely feel. It was always to become someone genuinely worth that interest in the first place, someone whose company other people choose freely, again and again, because they genuinely want to. This has been The Hidden Mind, and we will see you again in the next one, a genuinely more compelling version of yourself, already quietly underway.